Good evening, ladies and gents, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are here with Dr. Hafiz Rahman, who is a board-certified internal medicine physician. He is in private practice and practices out of Amsterdam and New York. His area of interest lies in treating diabetes and obesity-related metabolic disorders. And in his area of interest, he has well over 24 years of experience. Dr. Hafiz has helped hundreds of patients achieve a healthy weight and support weight maintenance via methodical dietary management and therapeutic interventions. His passion is to help as many people as possible through these intervention programs that he has in place. I will also add to his introduction that Dr. Hafiz is a humanitarian in many shapes and forms. He is serving the organization of Humanity First. He has a lot of projects that he does on and off in the United States, out of the United States, in a lot of South American countries, as well as abroad in Asian countries as well. Dr. Hafiz, without further ado, I will hand over the mic to you, and please enlighten us with your knowledge in this topic. And today's topic specifically is the role of uric acid in obesity and metabolic syndrome. Dr. Hafiz, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Nair, Dr. Nair, for introducing me to this meeting. I'm very glad and I'm very happy for the opportunity that we are talking about such an important topic pertaining to human health. Initially, when we had plan of speaking about this topic, the gentleman, Jason, who helps me create these, had created the name Cellular Apocalypse, because indeed uric acid does cause a cellular havoc in the cells. But that was close to Halloween, and since it did not materialize, so I changed the name so that people would not be scared of the fact that we are not talking about any apocalypse, real apocalypse, but we are talking about a silent destruction at the cellular level, which takes place by the uric acid. And it is very important for us to understand this phenomena, and then from there on, build on it to help ourselves improve our health. That is the purpose. So with this tiny introduction, I want to just start my talk today with this simple picture that is in front of you guys all. This picture shows on one side a human body on the right side, and on the other side are different type of foods. Now we got to understand that the food and different kind of foods is not simply is something to sustain us. It shouldn't be taken that way. And that's where I want to create the awareness. The food actually, and different type of foods, is actually an information. It carries an information that once it gets into the body, it triggers hormonal response or a neuronal response. And as a result of this, different food items get distributed differently. And that is what is the key element to understand, that not every food is similar once gets inside the body. It takes different routes, and it is very important for us to understand this particular issue before we proceed further. So why do we deposit fat or become fat? What happens actually? Human body is born, then the kids, they become kids, then they turn into adulthood and something happens. And even nowadays, during childhood, this is an issue seen. Why some people have uh, a lot more fatty deposits in the body and others do not? That is the question. And since I started my talk at the beginning, I said food is an information. So food is a signal, food is an information that once it gets into the body, it is ordered to behave in its prescribed routes. And that's what we are going to be talking about. What is uric acid? So uric acid is in reality a metabolic waste product. Not of every food item, but it is a metabolic waste product. And in human beings and in the science actually, so far, we have known uric acid in the context of gout only. That the gout uric acid crystals deposit in the joints, particularly in the great toe, and creates inflammatory response. We in medical community are used to prescribing anti-inflammatory to cut down the inflammation. And then sometimes we check the uric acid and it is found to be elevated. Sometimes it is not even elevated. Then we start the treatment too for that at that time. But my talk today is going to be not about gout, but rather uric acid causing cardiometabolic health problems way earlier than gout. And it is our job as clinicians and for our patients to know that we need to detect the uric acid at an early level, way before the dangerously elevated level of the gout, in reality, to prevent ourselves from this toxin that has catastrophic cardiometabolic issues. Now, normally speaking, uric acid target for the treatment for the gout, for example, is 6 milligram per deciliter. However, let me tell you this, that the uric acid at 5.5 milligram per deciliter starts showing, and even sometime a little earlier, starts showing cardiometabolic changes which are dangerous for our body. And that is why today's talk is going to be at that level so that we can understand it and help ourselves. Now, we know that purines, it is known in medical science that the purines, which are heterocyclic organic compounds, mainly coming from cellular-based foods and the DNA material of the regular cellular turnover of our body, are the they end up making uric acid at the end. There are two sources of the purines. Endogenous, which comes from cellular turnover, meaning, that when cells get old, they need to be changed, and their recycling process causes, and also the phenomena of autophagy, when the body is breaking down the old machinery, old cells, and turning them into recycling, and then on that process, you form purines, and that eventually leads to the uric acid synthesis. And then there are some foods that have also purines in them, like these are deep sea fishes, and also some organ meats that carry that. Now we will understand on the next slide that in reality, the high uric acid level, in fact, 70% of the uric acid production in the human body comes from the metabolism. And that metabolism is occurring within the body. And as you could see from this picture, 70%, 75%, two-thirds is coming from cellular turnover, recycling, and very little contribution is coming from purines, meaning that we've been targeting and telling our patients not to consume organ-based meats, not to consume fish, seafood, or red meat. And the reality is that the majority of the uric acid is not even coming from those foods. More greater part of the uric acid is coming from fructose. Who knew? Fructose is, as you know, 50% part of the table sugar. Fructose is nowadays very common in our food, unfortunately. And in reality, if we remove the element of metabolism, for which there is nothing we can do about, because it's in our design, it's happening. The foods that we consume we have some control over. And you look at the portion of the contribution of uric acid production from fructose is all-time high. So alcohol and fructose are the leading external sources instead of high purine foods that we have accustomed to knowing, which is like the meats and the seafood and organ meats, things like that. So DNA metabolics eventually lead to uric acid production. And it used to be that about 15 million years ago, we had a genome, a change in our gene, which caused us to eliminate uricase, which was the enzyme that broke uric acid into waste product, which we were able to excrete. And there are still a lot of animals that are able to excrete uric acid. If you're out walking and you see the bird poop coming on your head, that's actually largely uric acid too, but because their uricase is still intact. But in case of humans, for the survival benefit that the human beings back on middle Miocene time, there came the scarcity of the food. And as a result of that, we ended up having higher than normal uric acid. And the reason for that was that the uric acid helped us increase our blood pressure and caused more fat deposits in our body and caused insulin resistance. Why? Because in the winter months, when the food scarcity will take place, the body will be able to handle and deposit fats, and that could be utilized later on when the food shortage would occur. Now, the problem is that this loss of breakdown of the uric acid, while it was very good for human survival, because of the scarcity of the food, now has led to a situation where we are not suffering from any possibility of the food shortage. We are not suffering from any other catastrophic events in the world. We have access to the food all the time. And not only that we have access to the food, but we also have abundance of the food, and we are eating all the time. And not only that we are eating all the time, we're eating fructose and high glucose-based diet that is causing far more accumulation of the uric acid than our ancestors ever did. And as a result, if you just go a century back, maybe 70, 80 years back, the average level of the uric acid back then was under 4, and now it is over 6. And as a result, it is making all sorts of troubles for us, which we will figure out pretty soon as the talk keeps going. Let's have some nutritional facts clear here. You see, these are common drinks, and some of them will come on the next slide, and you could bring it up the next slide, Jason, where you could see the amount of sugar in them is horrendous. Look at that, 39 gram in Coca-Cola, 41 in Pepsi, 19 gram in this juice. All this Red Bull, Monster, I need not to say their names, but it is right in front of you, pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks. Look at the amount of, or the load of the sugar and the fructose that it puts into our body, which in excess creates, it triggers a pathway, which is called polyol pathway, which I would explain a little later on, that is causing conversion of the sugar into fructose, and fructose eventually is becoming uric acid. So now we got to understand that there is a stark difference between glucose and fructose. They are in equal amount in table sugar. There is no doubt about it. However, they behave completely differently once they get into our body. So they are together in lots of foods, especially sugary foods. They are in abundant quantity together. But once they get into our intestines and get separated, they behave totally differently. Why? Because glucose is a source of energy for all the cells of the human body. All human body, all the 10 trillion cells get to utilize glucose, and they use it as soon as it gets through the intestines into the bloodstream, through the portal vein. It goes to the liver. Liver gets to keep 20% of that to make glycogen, which is the storage form of glucose, and 80% of that glucose gets to go throughout the blood, and cells pick it up. Now that's where the insulin's function come in, and it causes or promotes movement of the glucose into the cells. However, if this is an excessive amount of glucose, that glucose has to go somewhere, because if it stays in the body, if it stays in the blood, it will create a huge amount of trouble. It is toxin itself to the endothelial cells, and that is why the body has a method, and that method is to convert the glucose to fat, or through polyol pathway to convert that into fructose, which fructose then further gets in, and which we could explain that more later on. But that fructose eventually causes uric acid once it gets processed and becomes fat in that process. Now, in case of fructose, fructose gets utilized about 10% within the intestines and creates havoc there, by the way. That's why I say to always remember that fructose in reality, other than what's present in the fruits and vegetables, because fruits and vegetables have high fiber content, and the fiber content helps drag the fructose down into the intestines, and intestinal bacteria, which are from 10 trillion cells to 100 trillion ratio of the bacteria in our intestines, they help to eat up a great part of the fructose. However, when that doesn't happen and you have a food that has a ready-made and high content of the fructose and doesn't have a fiber, like processed foods, that fructose, 90% of that unfortunately gets to go to the liver, and liver has no capacity to handle it. It starts depositing within the liver fat and becomes fatty liver, and then transports it elsewhere, and also have a lot of trouble depositing triglycerides everywhere. But the 10% of the fructose that gets to stay in the intestines and creates intraintestinal lipogenesis, means make new fats there, and also nitrates those tight junctions that are there to protect our sewer pipe, which is literally the intestinal sewer material that is supposed to be excreted, it creates a gap in them and causes leaky gut syndrome, which is very dangerous and a source of chronic inflammation. Polyol pathway is basically a pathway where when body senses that it has a high glucose, and that is frequent, as you know, in case of diabetics or people that have insulin resistance, meaning that even though they have insulin in their body, but the insulin's orders are not accepted by the cells, so they do not open their gates to get the glucose in, whether that's caused by the inflammation or by all other factors that we have previously discussed that promote insulin resistance. So despite having insulin, their bodies cannot handle the orders of the insulin. And as a result, high toxic glucose has no other way but to be converted into fructose, which eventually then again at the end makes uric acid, which is toxic to our mitochondria, which are the energy storehouse of our body. And when they get deposited in different tissues, they create different troubles. Like in a brain, the fructose deposits leads to dementia. And of course, obesity is an issue, and the uric acid depositing in your joints causes gout, etc. So together, this duo, this fructose and the uric acid, which fructose, as we talked earlier, is the reason why uric acid is formed. They create all these issues in the human body. You see fatty liver, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, addiction of the sugar and alcohol, gout, kidney disease, diabetes, and of course, obesity. Now, fructose is a toxin in itself because when it is being processed in the body, it consumes ATP. So it juices you out of the ATP, which is the energy unit of our cells, and also triggers an enzyme called AMP deaminase, which works contrary to AMP, which is a energy promoter. So that is where the issue is. And it also juices us out of the antioxidants in the form of depletion of NADP, and eventually causes the mitochondria to suffer oxidative stress. And in that process, by critically lowering the ATP levels inside the cells, it also causes de novo lipogenesis, which is formation of a new lipid or lipid synthesis. Uric acid, how does a uric acid work in the human body? How does it work as a toxin? Well, other than being a direct toxin by being deposited in the joints and in the different areas of the body, it also blocks the synthesis of nitric oxide, which is a dilator of the blood vessels. When it blocks the synthesis of nitric oxide, it causes vasoconstriction. And as a result of this, it causes hypertension naturally because your blood vessels are constricted. It causes also lack of supply of insulin because when your blood vessels are not dilated, the blood flow is not going to the organs efficiently. And as a result, you have an insulin resistance, which is directly caused by the uric acid. So uric acid in the blood, toxin, in the joints, toxin and inflammation, and also it serves as a signal for food scarcity. It creates this noise in the body that, hey, there is no food coming, as if your body is in crisis. And when body feels in crisis, what happens? It starts synthesizing fat because fat is a storage form of energy. Body has to make it, even though these are false conditions, but your body has to make the fat in thinking about a rainy day that never actually happens nowadays. Here we got to understand a concept before we go any further. Insulin sole job is to work as a hormone that gets released by the pancreas in order to, in response to glucose. That glucose has to be moved into the cells, and in that process, insulin acts as a growth hormone-like substance, creating excess growth everywhere in the body. Meaning, if it is at the cardiovascular system, it would promote atherogenicity. If it is in the breast tissue, it will promote breast cancer. If it is occurring in its action in the ovaries, it will create infertility. So everywhere in the body, high insulin would also be acting as a abnormal growth hormone-like factor, promoting all these medical issues. So when the insulin's actions are counter-regulated by these three hormones, glucagon, norepinephrine, and cortisol, that is why I tell my patients that are not insulin dependent, meaning they're not using insulin, that they are not using secretagogues, meaning the compounds that are causing insulin release from pancreas. I tell them not to consume and rush to orange juice if their sensor is showing them a lower glucose level, because they are not taking the medications, generally speaking, that are going to provoke a severe hypoglycemia. They have to give time to these counter-regulatory hormones whose job is to bring your sugar back by causing glycogenolysis, meaning breakdown of glycogen, which is a stored form of glucose, to increase your glucose levels. And as a result, you do not need to rush to these sugary substances in order to correct your sugar, unless you are critically below 50, generally speaking. Now, that's not a blanket term, but generally speaking, anybody that's on the GLP drug or SGLT2, which work on the kidney system, or metformin, generally will not see those kind of drops because of the counter-regulatory hormones. So please stay away from those sugary stuffs that are going to create problems for you by going back into availability of high glucose and fructose, and you would not be giving yourself any favor. Obviously, this has to be in conjunction with your own doctor, but those doctors that are listening, at least they could take away some message from this, that's the reason that these counter-regulatory hormones have to take action in order to bring this hypoglycemia, or sort of reactive, I should say, hypoglycemia back to normalcy. That time frame should be given to the body to recuperate. Now, under normal circumstances, when you have aerobic respiration taking place, on the left side, we have a cell. You have the cytosol, which is the liquidy portion of the cell, and you have inside the mitochondria and all other parts of the cell. But we are focusing right now on mitochondria, which are where the energy production takes place. So when glucose gets moved from cytosol into mitochondria, it generates glucose converts into pyruvate, and the pyruvate gets into the mitochondria, and then during that process, you make 2 ATPs. And once it gets into the Krebs cycle, it creates the products of the energy in the body, ATP, generating us 36 ATP per unit. And that is under normal circumstances, and that's how the body would be behaving. But if the glycolysis or the breakdown of glucose were to take place under anaerobic condition or hypoxic conditions, then they are totally different type of situation that you will be seeing. In that process, because of the lack of oxygen, you will have the tendency to form ethanol or lactic acid. And of course, there would be difficult prospects of generating ATP, which you were creating 36 ATPs as a result of the oxygen environment for the glycolysis to take place. So purines, going back to purines, which are present in the food and as you know, the cellular turnover, they get converted into xanthine, and then xanthine oxidase is the one enzyme that converts eventually the xanthine into the uric acid. So that's a simpler chemical reaction or the end product of the uric acid, which is a metabolic waste product. Now, there are drugs that work precisely on xanthine oxidase, and that famous drug is allopurinol, which blocks that. But by the way, there are some natural flavonoids like quercetin and luteolin, which quercetin in 500 milligram strength and luteolin in 100 milligram strength works as almost as efficiently as allopurinol in naturally bringing down the uric acid. So if uric acid is in your patient over 5.5, then these flavonoids can be useful in bringing the levels back down to under 5, which should be our goal. Now, AMP kinase, which is, I spoke previously, and if I, on previous slides, and I don't need to go back there, but it activates AMP deaminase, which is the evil twin of AMP kinase. And AMP kinase is the one that is the cellular gauge, actually, energy gauge. It is the one that monitors the production of energy in the body. It is a good guy, but fructose directly inhibits that. And through the action of the uric acid, fructose also block these two critical enzymes, carnitine, palmitoyl transferase, and ACADL, which both are for the fatty acid oxidation, causing fatty acid not to be burned for energy, but rather a favoring pathway for the lipids to be formed. And as a result, more lipids are formed in the body, more fats are deposited in the body instead of burning. Now, AMP kinase versus AMP deaminase, I want to emphasize again, which fructose as an element, as a food, causes AMP deaminase to be activated, which deactivates your energy, which converts ATP to AMP and then to IMP. Whereas AMP kinase, look at the importance of this enzyme, how many places it is utilized or it has its footprints. Fatty acid synthesis inhibition, so that the fatty acids could be utilized for energy source. Increase glucose uptake from the blood, which favors the absence of glucose from the bloodstream, which, as I have explained, the glucose is a toxin to the bloodstream itself or blood vessels, turns on catabolic pathways, forms or promotes ATP synthesis, also causes glucose production, which is gluconeogenesis, inhibition of that, and also blocks the triglyceride production, and also causes lipid oxidation to be utilized, free fatty acids to be utilized for energy. So this is where the talk ends. So I want to highlight that if in the pathway of weight loss, if we come across a situation when a patient is, or a person is following all the dietary guidelines, for example, controlling their carbohydrates, increasing their good protein intake, not fearing good fats, meaning consuming good fats, doing fasting of minimum 14 hours, if at all, if they could take it over 14 hours to promote the fat oxidation, and also sleeping good hours, doing exercise. And if they are stuck still with the weight, there might be that the uric acid is in play, and the uric acid should be checked and treated aggressively at that cardiometabolic level, which is not only serving as a toxin, but also causing more fatty synthesis, more fat deposits in the body. And that, if it gets prevented, will help with the weight loss journey and will improve the health of us as human beings and for our patients. So I will stop here and I will entertain any questions now, because this was all today for today. And here is some ways to reach out to me, engage in conversation. We have finally opened our own YouTube, Obesity Medicine MD. We are all on all the 4 social media, in the Instagram, on the Twitter, on the Facebook, and we are also on the TikTok. And we're trying to put every day some information for patients and for colleagues, some videos, some dietary suggestions, exercise suggestions, things like that, to continue the dialogue. So I will leave here and I will entertain any questions. You can put your questions up on the chat, and either Nayyar Bhai can read them, or Nayyar Bhai, you could help us with that kindly. You have any questions? And if there is any question from, you can unmute people from back end so that they can.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Hafiz, for your very elaborate presentation. Of course, there are some difficult parts to that presentation which people may not be able to follow, but there was a lot of content in there that made very, very good sense. And I think the thing that really stood out for me, Hafiz Bhai, personally, was the picture with all the drinks and the sugar that it has in there. That was perhaps the most scariest picture. मैं ये भी बताता चलूँ कि अगर आप लोगों के पास उर्दू में कोई सवाल हो तो हफीज़ भाई जो हैं वो आपके जवाब जो है वो उर्दू में भी दे सकते हैं। तो अगर आप लोग उर्दू में ज़्यादा कंफर्टेबल फील करते हैं सवाल करना, तो उर्दू के अंदर भी बात की जा सकती है। If we're going to entertain questions from both languages, so English and Urdu both. So if you have any questions in whatever language you feel comfortable speaking in, you are most welcome to ask your questions in that language. I'm going to go ahead and check the chat. Okay, so far we're getting some very good thank you notes. Azim Padiapura Saab says, thanks for the presentation. Miriam says, Jazakallah. Hafiz Bhai, if you don't mind me asking the first question. So, Hafiz Bhai, there was one slide in particular where you had mentioned that your body basically has a negative feedback mechanism, and that's how most of these hormones in the body are also acting. My question is, you said that the need for the body to starve does not happen very often. And of course, we're talking about this part of the world where food is in abundance. So how would you reconcile that with regions that obviously have food scarcity, and should we actually create an environment in our houses where I wouldn't say that there's food scarcity, but if we can mimic that, the other part of the world where, hunger is a problem, or, there's some kind of food famine going on, how can we do that in our own houses without actually, starving ourselves? So if you can, I don't know if I was able to ask my question properly,
Yeah,
but
that's an excellent question. Actually, you want to take us back to the times when seasonal foods and also the absence of food was a reality. It wasn't too long ago, and still in a lot of third world countries, that is a reality that the food is not available to people all the time. But let's let's remember one thing, that um, we are actually not talking about people that are starving in third world countries, because unfortunately they don't have the luxury to even select a food, let alone we're talking about this kind of situation in countries where the food is in abundance, but bad food is in abundance. And as a result of the bad food being in abundance, and nowadays, even countries that are not even from the advanced countries have followed the footsteps of um, the advanced countries and have started processing their food. They are in big trouble. Why? Because that food is sending the signal to create fat deposits in the body. Not only if the fat deposits were the only concern here, you probably would not be in that kind of predicament as we are talking today, that the inflammation that gets created by the fat and by these toxins is another chapter and another risk. And the best way to avoid this kind of situation is to fast, if you are medically stable to do it. Now, if you have had an advanced stage of disease where it is not healthy by your doctor to fast, then obviously this advice cannot be for you. This advice is exclusively for healthy individuals that are trying to live or aspire to live a healthy life. To them, if they should fast, it is best for them. And during this fast, this is what we call a wet fast, meaning you should continue to drink water. And by the way, dehydration or high salt creates also uric acid production by triggering polyol pathway, because the body again thinks that it is in a crisis. And once it thinks it's in a crisis, it would start making fat in an attempt to try to salvage the body for a future energy that actually never comes. So meaning, if you went to a movie theater and you started eating pretzels or the chips, and you're not drinking water, because majority of the time people are drinking sodas, so you're putting double damage in your body. You are consuming high quantity of salt, which are triggering polyol pathway, which is converting your glucose into fructose, and fructose converting into fatty acid fat deposits and the production of the uric acid. So why does the body do that in the case of dehydration? Well, it is because when you break down the fat, it creates carbon dioxide and H2O, metabolic water. So that metabolic water is in fact body's own design and a form to protect you in case of a crisis. So let's not forget this, that if we are having a salty meal, please drink a lot of water with it to at least neutralize the effect of that. If at all, I'm not against salt, but excessive salt will trigger this pathway. So now, going back to your question, we have to fast in order to generate or create that environment where body is forced to burning that sitting fat. Otherwise, you cannot burn fat unless you stop making the fat. and you stop making the fat unless you stop putting the foods that are going to convert into fat or create a false dehydration that's going to create fat synthesis.
Thank you, Hafiz bhai. Hafiz bhai, we have a question from Zoom Mid Northeast, and they're asking, could you talk about UA levels and gut microbiome and vitamin D levels?
So vitamin D is a very important anti-inflammatory vitamin. It is in one of our previous discussions, along with the omega-3s, this is one of those food essentials that serve the body as an anti-inflammatory substance and are very useful. And actually, we recommend that people consume vitamin D on a daily basis, about 1,000 international units daily. And if they are low on their blood test, they should be aggressively corrected by the 50,000 units, which I prescribe, but every doctor, according to the situation of the patient, can prescribe accordingly. Now, for the gut bacteria, we know that the gut microbes are essential part of our life. They are there, they are part of us. If we do not feed them, then they would feed on our intestines, unfortunately, causing leaky gut syndrome. And what is their food? Their food is fiber. Fiber is the prebiotic. So that is why I get surprised when people are taking probiotics. But if your intestines are hostile to your existing normal gut flora, then putting external gut flora into your intestines that is already inhospitable to it, what do you think it's going to do? Same thing. However, prebiotic, which is fiber, is the food of the bacteria. And look at a strange way that the God has created human body, is that we have no ability to digest fiber. So when we take fruits and vegetables, I always say, who says that these fruits and vegetables are for us? No, majority of that is for our bacteria, because that fiber in it is going to be the food of your gut flora. And if your gut flora are healthy, they produce certain hormones and signals in your body that promote health, that promote cellular turnover, that promote serotonin release, which is a hormone of the contentment. And they also boost your immune system. So, and they outnumber us from 10 trillion regular cells that are in our body to 100 trillion. Their presence is 100 trillion. And what was the third that they said? Vitamin D, gut bacteria, and?
The UA levels and gut microbiome. So they wanted to see the uric acid, the relationship of uric acid with gut microbiome and vitamin D levels.
Also, if your gut bacteria are not healthy, you're going to have serious trouble with uric acid as it is. So you will have a very difficult time handling a toxin otherwise to be processed. So that is, in general, what I could say about this.
Right. So, Dr. Hafiz, the next question is coming from Rochelle C, and she is asking, what are the potential benefits of consuming fructose in moderation, if any?
So, like I said, fructose that is present in your fruits and vegetables is fine. But of course, in moderation. And the funny thing is that beyond the moderation, eating fruits and vegetables is very difficult because of the fiber. Because when fiber gets into your stomach, it expands the lining of your stomach and when that happens, it sends neuronal signals to your brain that do not eat more. So as a result, you eat less. So that is why there is a natural prohibition, I should say this word, that is present in the consumption of the fruits and vegetables. that in large quantities, generally, your body would just simply reject it. And so in moderation, their consumption is encouraged, and that fructose is actually not dangerous for your body. Because first of all, the fructose present in an apple or in a pear or even in some vegetables is not a very high quantity. Plus, it is embedded with the fiber. And when that is embedded with the fiber, it gets dragged down into the intestines where the bacteria are waiting for it, and they use it as for their food. And so you don't have to handle it and worry about it.
Hafiz, just to add a little bit more flavor to your answer, I've heard a lot of diabetic patients say that they can consume a lot of fruit, but their sugar level doesn't spike up. So is that just a myth, or is there some truth to it?
No, so certainly there is it. That's the truth that we're talking about. But not every fruit is the same. For example, there are some fruits like grapes. The grapes is actually a modern candy in reality. And the reason is that these are highly processed fruits. And when they were present naturally way before our ancestors, they weren't that sweet. And now they are like a candy. So if you consume them, they will spike your sugar. But there are fruits like apple, pears, blueberries, these type of fruits, yes, they are right because of the fiber. It doesn't spike the sugars, and they can this way satisfy the cravings of their sugar. I should say, if your body is used to sugar, the sugar cravings can be mitigated with these fruits. So partly it's true, with the exception of just few fruits. Grapes are on the top for that reason.
Okay.
Any live question anybody has? Nair bhai?
I don't see anyone. Amina Tariq has a very good question. Fruit smoothies, is that a good form to take?
No.
Sugars and yes, go ahead.
No. The smoothies, because the problem with the smoothies is that you break down the fiber and you do not allow your body to process that fiber. And as a result, you are putting a high sugar load in your intestines, and that would create a ready-made glucose and fructose access to the bloodstream, which is very dangerous and bad. So yeah, consume fruits and vegetables in the original form. Making smoothies, yeah, dangerous a little bit, I would say, because the fiber is broken. Even though some authorities say that, hey, the fiber, even though broken, is still there. Yeah, it is there, but you have bypassed a large part of that processing that your teeth and your saliva was supposed to do, which you bypassed. And as a result, that lack of processing causes a higher availability of these sugars into your bloodstream. And the faster it gets to your bloodstream, that's where the game is. The faster it gets to the bloodstream, the faster it would trigger insulin response, which is where the problem is. If you could keep your insulin silent, you have won this game, basically. If you could keep your insulin silent, meaning if you consume things that would not trigger insulin release, you will win this race. That is based on my experience of almost now 7 or 8 years of dealing with foods and studying food science and nutrition, that I have figured out that if you know how to, and that's where I recommend CGM placement, that the CGM helps you track your glucose and you avoid those foods that have the tendency to spike your sugars. And obviously, let's not forget that once you are measuring sugars, but you're not measuring fructose. So always keep that in mind, that fructose is not going anywhere. It is going 90% of the time to your liver and creating problems. So let's not forget that part. But still, a great part of the glucose mystery can be resolved with the CGM, and that helps you overcome and avoid those foods that cause you the spike. Now, if you ate those foods and your body has the ability to bring down the sugar rapidly, that means that you have a good insulin response and your spikes are easily and nicely handled by your insulin. And that time frame is around 70 minutes and under. So ideally 60, so 60, 70 minutes. If you come back below 90, around there, you're doing good.
Okay. Hafiz bhai, the questions are now trickling in. So the other one is, being diabetic, one tends to reduce intake of carbs, but lean more on meats and seafood. Since these increase uric acid, how should we moderate meats and seafood when diabetic?
Excellent question. My God, that is an absolutely phenomenal question. So yeah, on that case, as I had recommended, that you should take the flavonoid supplements. Have your level checked and take the flavonoid supplements, quercetin 500 milligram and luteolin 100 milligram, and vitamin C, which is a uricosuric drug, meaning drags your uric acid through your urine. So these supplements will help you and offset any prospects of increase in the uric acid through those foods. But let's not forget, 2/3 of your uric acid is coming from your own metabolism. So if it was that terrible, you would not be seeing that kind of spike from those foods. It is from fructose. So if you control your fructose and you're consuming those diets and you're keeping your weight good, your all likelihood of not facing a uric acid calamity are very slim. However, despite that, if your levels are still uptrending, you could consume these flavonoids, which are essentially, you could say, supplements, and they work as efficiently as allopurinol in bringing your sugar down and keeping you healthy and discouraging fat deposits in your body. Excellent question, though. Any other question, Nayir Bhai?
Yeah, we did have Zoom Mid Northeast. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, I know you wanted to ask a question. Zoom Mid Northeast. Okay, so it's not allowing him to. Okay, ask him to mute. Can you do it now?
Nayir Bhai,
Yes.
is there anyone that with any Urdu question?
I don't think so at this time, but Zoom Mid Northeast is now asking a question. Please go ahead.
Let's go.
Yes.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, it's Zahar. So, Jazakallah for a very nice presentation. And I asked a question about the gut microbiome and very well answered. And you just answered my question about the flavonoids. What I wanted to know, what in the real world, how good are those flavonoids at reducing uric acid levels? We are usually left with allopurinol to bring down uric acid in most of these patients, having to juggle with, chronic stage kidney disease stage 2 and sometimes stage 3. So how good are these flavonoids at bringing them down, the uric acid?
So as some studies are indicating that they're as good as allopurinol. So that's why I said if you combine the two, the luteolin and the quercetin, quercetin 500 and luteolin in 100 milligram, and the vitamin C in 500 milligram, then you are able to keep this uric acid down pretty significantly. One single agent out of these, out of the first two that are flavonoids, brings about 8% drop.
Okay.
So you could from there figure out that if you're traveling at 5.5 with your patient, which is what I recommend that we start treating aggressively, not at 6 and wait at 6, because most lab.
Right. I think at 6 it gets too late. So
Yes. Absolutely.
right. So
You-
do we have any studies comparing them? Would you be able to?
We can look for those studies. I would have to dig them down.
Okay.
Because um, uh, I was not expecting that question, but that's
Okay.
good.
Okay.
I can get that.
And Jazakallah.
That we could that if that there are comparative studies on it
Okay.
where allopurinol, because as you know, allopurinol alone, its own efficacy is about 10% roughly.
Yeah, and you're juggling with, kidney disease and you're juggling with decreased renal functions and not
Correct.
knowing when. Yeah, so it's nephrotoxic on its own. So
Yes.
it's not easy to titrate with the reduced GFR. So
Yeah.
it would be a good option to have something else. But I would love to have some studies
Yeah.
to look at them. Right.
That's
Right.
that's
And there was one comment I just wanted to make. I think Dr. Nair made that somebody told him, a diabetic, that his sugar doesn't spike when he takes fruits. There's just such a understanding amongst our people. Fruits, especially grapes and watermelons, they spike sugar like nothing else. So please
correct.
tell whoever told you that
Yeah.
they do send the sugar soaring up. And yeah, mangoes are okay, dates are okay, but sugar fruits do send the sugar up a lot.
Yeah.
Jazakallah, Baji. Actually, that question was coming from a Pakistani mango addict.
Yes, I could almost hear that. Yes. So, but Jazakallah for a very nice presentation. I wish I can get some MOC points on this, but I don't know how to do that. But Jazakallah.
Well,
Definitely
thank you
something
very
to
much for
consider.
your comments. And also, I want to let people know that if you have fasted, do not do the uric acid. Why? Because in the fasting time, you have triggered ketosis and autophagy. And if that happens, then remember that 70% contribution of your own body's metabolism or cellular turnover would spike your uric acid level, and that might be a false signal as a result. So fasting state, dehydrated state, exercise, post-exercise, because in exercise you break down the muscles, old muscles get broken down, new are formed. So as a result, the uric acid levels should be judged accordingly with a grain of salt. So let's.
Got it. Good point. Yes.
Yes,
Jazakallah.
no
Okay.
problem.
Hafiz Bhai, another question coming from Dr. Mafaz Mansoor. He's asking, does the consumption of green tea, which contains flavonoids, help to decrease uric acid levels?
Absolutely phenomenal question. Yes, luteolin and quercetin have the natural tendency to be there. As a result, the acid does help, but is it enough to keep the uric acid at bay? That's the question. And I don't know the answer to that, honestly. I would think that if you tested somebody and they are running over 5.5, use the flavonoid supplements, use vitamin C, use green tea, use all those things so that people can consume better foods, which are mainly proteins and fats, and do not have to contend with the uric acid going up and create some problems for them. So if they could balance it, avoid dehydration also, that's another element. So that's why we recommend that you drink water in good quantities, especially when you're fasting. Not during Ramadan, of course, but during non-Ramadan fasting, drink water and avoid dehydration. Remember the camels? How do they travel through an epic journey through the desert? Because that hump has 80 grams of fat, and that fat needed, when needed, can create the metabolic water for them, and that's why they don't need water. Or the hummingbirds that they go to those epic voyages for thousands of the miles, they are fat, and they have that fat that creates the metabolic water. So yes, in one way, dehydration triggers that. On the other way, that fat is holding your water too in there, which is utilized on rainy days. But see, that's where the juggle is.
Imani Ba is asking, is it safe to fast with no water when you're taking multiple medications?
No, not at all. Who says that? You should not.
Fair enough.
You should drink a lot of water. Yeah, but water only. We are not asking to drink sodas, and those sodas, those things that we just talked about on the slide, they are poison. So somebody asked me the other day this thing, that how should we avoid drinking these things? And remember, they are addictive. Their addiction is as severe as cocaine and heroin, because they attack the same centers, pleasure centers in the amygdala. And the answer is that if you put it in your brain, in your mind, that this is a metabolic toxin that I'm putting in my body, you would think twice before touching it. You could flavor your water with natural things, and that would sound delicious. Eventually, once your body detoxifies, there is nothing like that. Your body will feel completely different. Your skin will glow. And all the money that you spent in trying to revitalize your skin, try doing fasting, try sleeping good 7-8 hours, try hydrating yourself, try avoiding fructose, and you'll see how your body reacts back favorably. The problem is we are not giving our body a chance. We want only GLP drugs to lose weight, and as a result, we are looking for miracle. That is not going to happen.
Mm.
Yeah, that we have to treat the condition with where it started from. It started from a bad food, and we got to eliminate it. If we don't eliminate it, we are not going to have a healthy time. And, you know, the weight is all in our control in majority of the cases. And remember, 80% of the weight loss battle is in your diet. The remaining 20% is your exercise, because you need to regenerate your muscles, and out of which, like I said, stretching is very important. And I've created few clips for stretching too that I do myself. That doesn't mean people should do those, but I do those stretchings. That's global for the whole body, to create that situation where body starts regenerating new muscles and keep your skin toned.
All right.
Nayyar Bhai, you had some story to tell a little bit. I would like that you kind of tell us how, I mean, you have made some changes. Are you comfortable?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so this was about roughly about 7 months ago. I decided, just to give you a little bit of a backdrop why I decided to do this. I basically decided to quit sugar, and especially, you know, high fructose sources. You talk about, you know, cold drinks, you talk about sodas, you talk about ice cream, whatever it is. Any source of sweet, any sort of source of sugar, I decided to quit that. When I was doing my PhD back in the day, my PhD supervisor, I remember I walked into his office with a KFC box and a drink of Coke, and I was sitting on his table and I offered him some. And I remember at that time, he turned 40 years old. And it was very surprising to me because the first thing he said to me was, I offered him some KFC and he said, I can't eat this, Nair. I'm already 40. And you can eat and drink whatever you want to do to your body. You can be nocturnal, you don't want to sleep, you want to stay awake at night, do whatever you want to do, whatever injuries you want to do to your body until the age of 40, do it because your body will be able to reverse those effects. But by the time you turn 40, those effects are irreversible, and that damage will be irreversible. And so I turned 37 this year, and I decided that why wait till 40? You never know. You might die in 2 days or 3 days or 30 days, So I decided to quit sugar 7 months ago. This was around the same time that I came across Dr. Hafiz, and we started talking on this topic, and we even did a couple of programs together on social media, and it was very encouraging because I needed that push at that time, and I think Dr. Hafiz just came into my life at the right time when I made that decision to quit sugar, and huge motivation for me, no doubt. And so in 7 months, Hafiz Bhai, I've been able to lose a very considerable amount of weight. I was at 124 pounds, and now, as of yesterday, when I shared that story with you, I'm 108. And
Wow.
just by quitting sugar, I have not made any drastic changes to my diet. I still eat, my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner. I still try to eat whatever I can healthy, whether it's rice, naan bread with curry meals, with whatever it is. Did not make any drastic changes. The only change I made was quit my sugary drinks, cut down completely on things like ice cream. And in doing so, Hafiz Bhai, I mentioned this to you yesterday, that you automatically quit other things. Like, for example, if you were to cut down on ice cream, you have automatically cut down on fats as well. So it's not just the sugar, but the bad fats that you're putting into your body, which I was able to quit. So yeah, that's just my story I wanted to share with everyone. That yeah, sugar is your greatest enemy out there. Hafiz Bhai is not lying about these things. It's real. So
So one of the things, Nayyar Bhai, that we recommend in our office is to go after BRI, to not go after the weight anymore. Because if you went after the BRI, the weight is going to follow along. But if you did not pay attention to BRI, which is body round index, that is, you take a simple tape, go right above your navel, go around your body in the naked body, essentially naked meaning that area where you're measuring it,
right.
and you take it. And generally speaking, for men, it should not be over 40. And for women, it should not be over 35. If you are able to attain that, that means that you have a decent level of absence of internal or visceral obesity, which also is linked with the fatty liver. So there are two different depots: the visceral obesity, which is around the organs, in and around the tummy area, and in the liver. Liver can only handle 0.5 pound of fat before becoming extremely inflammatory and creates all sorts of cytokines, and likewise the fat around the organs. So whenever I have told my patients to chase that goal, they have done very well because their body extremely responds positively. Now, ideally speaking, in people, the ideal would be that they measure their height, divide it on 2, and whatever results in inches I'm talking about, whatever comes out is the real BRI for them. If they can maintain that, they have won more than half of their battle.
Fair enough. Jazakallah for that. Yeah, and the one thing is, yes, because I was addicted to sugar, I don't know if I should say addicted to, or I should say that I was a victim of the American food system.
That is a correct statement.
Yeah, right. And so the feeling has completely flipped And I feel like the first month or the first 30 days were very difficult. I'm not gonna lie. That's where the real challenge is. But once you overcome that, now that I don't eat any sugary products or food or whatever it is, it gives me a feeling of pleasure. So it was the opposite before. And
Mhm.
it's very, very easy. The problem is the abundance of food, Hafiz Bhai. And because there is so much abundance of food, especially in the US, and these things are so readily available and so cheaply available. And that's the thing, because I've noticed that in the US society in general, I've seen that healthy foods are more expensive
Yeah,
and junk food is extremely cheap and readily.
correct. But
And
that's what they want you to do.
correct.
So it's like as if it is designed that one side food industry will like make you sick, and on the other side the other industry would have to generate things to help you cure that. And so I've had nearby doctors that refer to me for weight loss, and they tell their patients, go to Dr. Rahman, he'll write you GLP and you could eat whatever you want to, without doing the honest uh, assessment or telling them that this guy is not going to write you the GLP unless you behave with your diet. And I have indicators, I have told you, Nair Bhai, that where we have the ability to assess the inflammation in the body and the BRI. And if the patients are not behaving with the diet, we tell them, hey, respectfully, we part ways, because we're not here to waste time. We're here to
Right.
help as many people as they can. And I know the food is the answer here. So you're correct that the food is cheap, but deliberately cheap.
All right.
If they want to, they can remove those subsidies from those processed foods and dedicate those for the food production, and we would not have an issue here.
That's right. That's very
Like when they filled all those American agriculture fields with corn, they knew what they were doing, right? So, and when you said, a thought came to me that when you went through, and month is approximately the time, it's 3 to 4 weeks when your body goes through withdrawal of the sugar, and it's a tremendous craving. It's crazy. People go crazy. I have patients that told me, I go nuts. I'm like a biggest bad person on earth. And how should I deal with that? And I always tell them, let's identify something natural, which is sweet, but not so well, not so good, but which is sweet to offset the craving, like
right.
dates or grapes even. So I will pick grapes or what's the watermelon, like the doctor said earlier. I would pick those compared to these kheers that we make, these mithais that we make, the sweets or the donuts or the candies. I'll take them any day, and then slowly come out of the addiction of the sugar this way,
That's
like
right.
like I always said, for cakes, like some people have the habit of eating cakes and cookies with their tea or coffee. I have suggested, hey, try eating nuts and dates with that. You'll
Mhm.
like it. It's a nice combination, and you will have a better time. Now, there's
Correct.
another concept, Nair Bhai, and that's called timed sensitive eating. So even though you're fasting, but between the time that you stopped eating, you should not continue to eat, meaning that if you have 8, 9 hours of the window of eating, that shouldn't give you the license to continue eating those hours, because you will offset the effect of the beneficial effect of your fasting. So once you finish eating, that's why I say your eating should be so hearteous and so dense that it will keep you filled for 5, 6 hours.
Correct. That's true. And I believe in the fact that you should only put calories in your body that your body actually needs. And once that need has been met, then there is no need to put any additional or excess calories in your body. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. And that's why we recommend heavy foods. Why? Because heavy foods are heavy for the body, and they send signals. Like I said at the beginning of this talk, food is information. It goes and signals in your body. It's not like random thing. There's well-designed machinery inside. that is waiting for the food to get in and then release hormones or neuronal signals to your brain to control or to keep. Like fructose. In case of fructose, there is a system set in the body which makes you eat more and more, more and more. Like now, before I used to do the same like everyone else do, I used to drink these sugary things with eating, and I used to like wonder how come I just keep eating? Yeah, you keep eating because these are addictive compounds that are making you, they have switched your centers of satiety, and you just are blindly eating and eating until some people puke.
That's right. That's very true. All right, okay. So we are now at 9:25 p.m. EST. Hafiz bhai, with your permission, can we go ahead and conclude?
Yeah, so unless you want me to say something in Urdu, we can conclude.
Please do if you can, Hafiz bhai.
So very shortly, I would say मैं ये कहूँगा कि जो खुराक है उसके निज़ाम को बेहतर करने की ज़रूरत है। जो खुराक जिसमें शुगर की मिकदार बहुत ज़्यादा है और ख़ुसूसन उस किस्म की शुगर जो रेडीमेड है, जो इंसानों ने बनाई है, जो कायनात में कुदरती तौर पे मौजूद नहीं है, वो उसका इज्तनाब करें, क्योंकि उसके खाने के नतीजे में जिस्म में ऐसे कीमियावी मादे पैदा होते हैं जो जिस्म को मजबूर करते हैं और खाने को, और उनके नतीजे में जब शुगर बढ़ती है, जब खून के दौरानिये में शुगर बढ़ती है, तो वो जिस्म में जो है मोटापे का रुझान पैदा करती है और मोटापा बढ़ाती है, और उसके नतीजे में फिर जिस्म पे सारे जिस्म पे उसके असरात फैलते हैं, और फिर उसको ऑफसेट करने के लिए, उसको ख़त्म करने के लिए इंसुलिन जिस्म पैदा करता है, और इंसुलिन बज़ाते खुद एक ऐसा कीमियावी मादा है जो जिस्म में जो उज़्व हैं उनको बढ़ाता है। मसलन अगर वो औरतों के जो ब्रेस्ट है उसके एरिया में अगर काम करे तो वहाँ पे कैंसर बना सकता है, अगर ओवरीज में जाए तो वहाँ पे जो है वो हो सकता है कि वो ऐसी औरतें बच्चा पैदा करने की सलाहियत उनमें ख़त्म हो जाए, मर्दों में जो है वो स्पर्म्स की सलाहियत ख़त्म हो जाए। इसी तरह लोग जो हैं वो जल्दी उनमें जो उनके दिमागों में अल्जाइमर्स और डिमेंशिया शुरू हो जाता है, और दिलों में अगर वो हमला करे तो वहाँ पे वो खून की शरियानें बंद करती है। तो इस तरह ये सारी चीज़ें ये जिस्म में पैदा होती हैं ऐसी खुराक से जिनके अंदर शुगर होती है। इसलिए ज़्यादातर जो है हम इस बात का इजहार कर रहे हैं आज की गुफ्तगू में कि ज़्यादातर वो खुराक खाएं जो कुदरती तौर पे कुदरत ने पैदा की है, जो ओरिजिनल हालत में है। मसलन सेब है, अंडे हैं, गोश्त है, सब्जियां हैं, ये चीज़ें कुदरत ने पैदा की हैं। इनके खाने से नुकसान उतना नहीं होगा जितना बल्कि बहुत कम होगा उसकी निस्बत के आप वो खीरें खाएं, मिठाइयाँ खाएं, सोडे पिएं। अब अल्लाह ताला ने पानी बनाया, 60% हिस्सा जिस्म का पानी से है, पानी पिएं, पानी को फ्लेवर थोड़ा सा कर लें, मतलब नेचुरल चीज़ों के साथ, लाइक शिकंजी बना लें, उसकी लेमन छिड़क कर, या उसके अंदर थोड़े से जो है वो बाज़ लोग कुकम्बर डाल देते हैं या फ्रूट डाल देते हैं उसके अंदर, काट कर उसको फ्लेवर बना लेते हैं। तो इस तरह पानी जैसी कोई और नेमत नहीं है, और पानी के बगैर जिस्म में एक रिएक्शन पैदा होता है जिसको कहते हैं डिहाइड्रेशन, के पानी की कमी, और उसके नतीजे में भी बहुत सारे नुकसान होते हैं। तो ये सारी गुफ्तगू इसलिए की गई थी ताकि अहबाब इसको समझें और अपनी सेहत की तरफ तवज्जो दें, और उसके साथ साथ सोना कम से कम 7 घंटे, अगर एक स्टेज में नहीं सो सकते तो 7 घंटे की नींद पूरे दिन में पूरी करने की कोशिश करें, और जिस्म में जो है एक्सरसाइज की आदत डालें, चाहे लाइट वेट्स हों या स्ट्रेचिंग हो, उसकी आदत डालें और वॉक की आदत डालें। अगर आप ये सारे छोटे मोटे आसान काम कर लें, जिसमें जो है रोज़ा भी है, ऐसा रोज़ा जो जिसके साथ पानी की इजाज़त है लेकिन सॉलिड खुराक की इजाज़त नहीं, ताकि जिस्म में जो पुराने कीमियावी मादे बने हुए हैं और जो फैट बनी है वो एनर्जी के तौर पर इस्तेमाल हो सके। तो ये सारी चीज़ें, ये आज की खुलासा था आज की गुफ्तगू का, और उम्मीद है कि आप हजरात ने सुना होगा, और अल्लाह करे कि इससे आपको कोई फ़ायदा पहुंच सके, और इंशाल्लाह जो भी आपका कोई सवाल है आप सोशल मीडिया पोस्ट के ज़रिए इवन उर्दू में भी पूछ सकते हैं और इंशाल्लाह ताला उनका जवाब देने की कोशिश की जाएगी।
Jazakallah Hafiz bhai. So just to wrap up here very quick, moderation is key. And that's the message that Hafiz bhai is leaving us with today. Moderation in your diet, moderation in the way that you consume water, moderation in your sleep patterns, and moderation in exercise. So all of these things should, and again, there's not every formula will be applicable to every person. Not every formula that is discussed in this conversation today is going to affect everyone. But of course, it has to be very tailored specific. And that is the expertise that Dr. Hafiz brings to the table. And if you feel that, you need more tailored specific advice, you can certainly reach out to him. We can see all of his social media outreach on the screen right now. There's an Instagram channel, there's an X channel, and then there's a Facebook channel as well that he has. And yes, he is very active on social media as well, and he is very actively posting things with his patients on his social media page. So please feel free to reach out to him if you need very specific answers to specific problems. With that, we'll wrap it up, and Jazakallah, and thank you so much, everyone, for attending our call today. We will be returning in about a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit more, because we know we're going into the holiday period at this time. So most likely we'll be reaching out again or we'll be holding another episode in this beginning of the next year in 2025. Till that time, keep yourself safe, keep your loved ones safe, and hope you all have a great new year and happy holidays to everyone. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening.
Thank you.